Buenos días. Bienvenidos a todos. Iniciamos el acto de inauguración de la Jornada de Investigación de Salud Investiga, la 9ª jornada. Y, en primer lugar, agradecerles su presencia aquí y, por supuesto, esperar que las jornadas sean fructíferas. Estoy segura de ello, que empezamos un día importante, un día interesante de trabajo y, por lo tanto, sin más dilación, voy a empezar a pasar la palabra a las personas que me acompañan en esta mesa. En primer lugar, al gerente de la Fundación Palacio de Salud, Juan Jesús Banderas, para que pueda darle a ustedes la bienvenida.
Sí. Bueno, muchas gracias, directora general. Bueno, mi papel desde la dirección de la Fundación Palacio de Salud, como entidad organizadora de la jornada, además de dar la bienvenida a esta ciudad que la verdad nos ha acogido magníficamente, y yo creo que es un escenario extraordinario para celebrar un congreso y para tener también un ratito más lúdico, festivo. Pues, bueno, cada año, muy brevemente, cada año nos lo ponen más difícil ustedes, porque vamos incrementando el número de asistentes, el número de comunicaciones. Hemos llegado este año a 1.400 inscritos, de los cuales quizás lo más destacable, lo más importante, es que hay comunicaciones de 400, entre ponentes y comunicadores hay 479 personas. Es decir, que hay una interacción y una gestión del conocimiento que ustedes generan, pues la verdad, bastante importante. Yo también quisiera destacar sobre el programa que se inició ayer con los talleres, al que teníamos ya 900 personas inscritas, que hemos intentado cubrir de alguna forma, y ya más detalladamente el profesor Jerónimo Pachón, como presidente del comité científico, les explicará. Hemos intentado cumplir un amplio espectro que no solamente fuera de contenido científico puro, sino también cuestiones más de gestión y también, como no podemos olvidar, a todos los agentes que de alguna forma intervienen en el proceso de la generación del conocimiento y su transformación en innovación. Por eso hemos querido crear un espacio concreto de interrelación con empresas, de transferencia tecnológica, y dentro del marco de lo que llamamos Health Partnering, vamos a celebrar un total de 16 encuentros con empresas, otros encuentros con grupos de investigación, de los que esperamos puedan surgir oportunidades de innovación, oportunidades de tecnología y oportunidades de desarrollo y, en definitiva, de transformación de conocimiento realmente en salud. Yo solamente me cabe esperar que las jornadas, además de, como les decía, ser interesantes por el lugar que nos ha acogido, también sean de enorme interés por el programa que se ha preparado, pero también por las relaciones que cada uno de ustedes, unos con otros, puedan establecer desde el punto de vista científico y desde el punto de vista de gestión, y que ello redunde positivamente en que consigamos sentirnos una comunidad realmente investigadora, mucho más en Andalucía, y que los resultados cada día sean más la consecuencia del trabajo de todos y no la consecuencia de una competencia que, siendo deseable, tiene que indudablemente ser compatible con una cooperación importante. Destacaba que en el mundo de las empresas quizás lo significativo es que incluso también tenemos hasta 14 comunicaciones de diferentes empresas del ámbito de la biotecnología, y eso también es un factor diferencial con respecto a otras jornadas. Para finalizar, bueno, decirles que estamos desde la Fundación Palacio de Salud totalmente a su disposición. aparte de otros objetivos que todos conocen, en este acto y en este evento, nuestra función es facilitar al máximo posible, dentro de nuestras capacidades, que todos cumplan los objetivos para los que han estado aquí. Por tanto, aquellos que tenemos la palabra organización aquí en nuestras acreditaciones, estamos directamente para intentar conseguir ese objetivo. Por tanto, estamos, como decía, a disposición de todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Juan Jesús. Seguidamente paso la palabra al director del Plan Estratégico de I+D en Salud, a Jerónimo Pachón, que además es el presidente del Comité Científico de estas Jornadas de Salud Investiga.
Buenos días. En mi calidad de, como comenta la directora general, de director del Plan Estratégico de I+D en Salud, quería darle la bienvenida a estas jornadas y además, después de oír los números que comentaba Juan Jesús Bandera, alegrarme especialmente como profesional médico que además tiene actividades científicas, cuestión que, como ustedes saben, simultáneo con mi posición de director del plan estratégico, como en otros planes transversales en el sistema sanitario. Yo creo que tengo que alegrarme porque, intentando remontarme a cuándo fue la primera jornada de investigación que la Consejería organizó, no he logrado encontrar cuál fue la fecha de la primera, pero sí de la segunda, que fue en el año 1996 en Almería, y entonces estábamos muy atrás referente a cómo estamos ahora. De manera que a lo largo de estos 15 años largos, realmente ha habido un cambio, yo creo, importante, ¿no? En dos aspectos. Un aspecto desde la perspectiva de la producción científica que los profesionales realizan a lo largo de las distintas instituciones sanitarias de Andalucía y en colaboración con la universidad y otras estructuras y otras instituciones de investigación, y por otra parte porque el planteamiento desde un punto de vista de la estrategia científica de la Consejería de Salud se ha modificado sustancialmente, de manera que tenemos las jornadas que estamos inaugurando y tenemos unas jornadas con un contenido que es muy diferente al que tenía en el año 1996. Y estas jornadas son fruto, por tanto, del trabajo de todos nosotros y, además, impulsada de manera, yo creo que importante, en el plan estratégico de I+D+I en salud, puesto en marcha por la Consejería en el año 2006. De modo que podemos tener un programa que ya no estamos hablando de que hay que investigar, sino que estamos hablando en el contenido del mismo, como comentaba el director gerente de la Fundación Progreso Salud, existen 7 simposios científicos en enfermedades prevalentes o con mayor morbilidad y mortalidad, liderados por personas de alto nivel científico de Andalucía y componentes que son de Andalucía o de España, y podrían haber sido de fuera de España si lo hubieran deseado, porque hubiera querido expresarse algún aspecto científico diferente al que en nuestro país podríamos encontrar como personas expertas concretamente. Y además porque vamos a mirar a lo largo de estas 3 jornadas, o 2 días, perdón, aspectos de transferencia de tecnología, la orientación a resultados de la investigación crítica en una sociedad del conocimiento como son las sociedades avanzadas, como ustedes saben, pero además los talleres que fueron ayer, estructuras de apoyo como biobancos, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. De manera que yo creo que nos tenemos que congratular de que estamos los que estábamos en el año 1996 o antes, y muchas más voluntades concitadas en el entorno de la producción científica y la consideración de la necesidad ineludible en mi opinión, de realizar y producir conocimiento científico en el sistema sanitario de Andalucía. Por tanto, creo que hay mucho hecho, aunque, sin duda alguna, hay mucho por hacer, como en toda empresa humana, sin duda alguna, ¿no? Yo creo que los humanos nos caracterizamos porque queremos progresar continuamente y hemos llegado a un buen punto, pero no es el que queremos colectivamente y, por tanto, nos queda mucho por hacer. Y en este contexto, mañana, en la jornada de mañana, habrá 2 mesas sobre aspectos relacionados con la concatenación profunda de la investigación en el sistema sanitario con la estrategia de la gestión clínica y por otra parte, con el programa de desarrollo de recursos humanos en investigación en el sistema sanitario público de Andalucía, que en el desarrollo del plan estratégico de I+D+I 2006-2010 profundizan aspectos que son importantes, como mañana tendremos ocasión de tratar, para continuar avanzando. Nada más por mi parte, salvo esperar que, como todos los congresos, esto sirva para 3 cosas, ¿no?, que es para lo que vamos a los congresos. Para aprender, por una parte, si todos aprendemos unos de otros, forma parte de la relación profesional en cualquier área del conocimiento, la medicina o no, pero a la vez y de manera importante para establecer nuevas relaciones y para intercambiar puntos de vista tanto científicos como en aspectos de los parte del programa que son de estructuras de apoyo, biobancos, cómo se articula las mesas de mañana, etcétera, las medidas que se expresarán, pues intercambiar puntos de vista que nos enriquezcan a todos. Nada más por mi parte y gracias por su atención y bienvenidos de nuevo.
Gracias, Jerónimo. Voy a ser muy breve en la exposición porque yo creo que tenemos un importante desarrollo de programa en este momento y sobre todo un acto que a continuación se va a producir, que es de gran relevancia, como ahora comentaremos, por lo tanto voy a ser enormemente breve. En primer lugar, disculpar la asistencia de la consejera, que tenía previsto hacer esta conferencia inaugural y que se va a trasladar a la clausura de esta jornada el día 22 a las 2 de la tarde, creo. Hará esa conferencia, un problema de agenda le ha impedido estar ahora mismo con nosotros, pero nos acompañará mañana. En segundo lugar, yo quiero mostrar, y creo que es para mí importante, el agradecimiento a la Fundación Palacio y Salud, a Juan Jesús Bandera y a su equipo, por el trabajo que vienen haciendo en el desarrollo y en el apoyo a la gestión de la investigación para la Consejería de Salud y por la capacidad de organización de estas jornadas que durante muchos años, como antes comentaba Jerónimo, han ido creciendo, a la vez que ha ido creciendo también con nosotros el desarrollo del Plan Estratégico de I+D en Salud 2006-2010. Sé que ya de entrada será un éxito como las anteriores jornadas y agradecer no solamente el esfuerzo, sino algo que a mí me parece fundamental, que es la motivación y el entusiasmo de su equipo en ser capaces de estar al servicio de los investigadores para hacerles fácil la creación de conocimiento, la generación de conocimiento y el intercambio del mismo. Gracias desde la Consejería de Salud al esfuerzo de este equipo y al esfuerzo constante que están manteniendo. Este crecimiento que antes comentaba el director del plan de investigación, Jerónimo Pachón, durante estos últimos nueve jornadas llevamos ya, ¿no? La primera, decía, no recuerdo, era en Marbella, en el Costa del Sol, la primera, la siguiente en Almería, pequeñas reuniones, ¿no?, de grupos, casi de grupos de amigos que se sentaban para ver cómo era esto de la gestión y la oportunidad de la gestión de la investigación y cómo vehiculizar, se ha ido convirtiendo con el tiempo en algo que era, en cierta medida, No digo la meta porque metas no existen, sino el camino que nos hubiera gustado recorrer, y es conseguir ver en este foro, como ahora desde esta posición aquí arriba de privilegio que tengo al tener la vista de toda la sala, profesionales que se dedican a la gestión de la investigación, investigadores clínicos pertenecientes a unidades clínicas asistenciales, profesionales de la universidad, profesionales de la empresa, técnicos de apoyo metodológico, o sea, todos los elementos y, por supuesto, profesionales y gestores y la propia Administración sanitaria dando apoyo desde las consejerías tanto de salud como de innovación. Por lo tanto, creo que esto es lo que da potencia, da solidez a una apuesta de gobierno, del Gobierno andaluz, por la investigación y la innovación, y que la Consejería de Salud ha cogido como suya y desarrolla en el área de biomedicina en todo su potencial. Tenemos mucho camino por recorrer, pero hemos recorrido un camino muy importante. Tanto en infraestructura, tanto en capacidad de recursos, tanto en mejora en la producción, tanto en potencialidad de traslación del conocimiento y de transferencia de este conocimiento a la empresa y al final en el resultado en el paciente. Creo que hemos mejorado, que hemos desarrollado un proyecto y en estas mesas de estos 2 días de trabajo algunas cuestiones quisiera resaltar como especialmente importantes, ¿no? Una de ellas, ha hecho referencia ya en la mesa, el componente clínico asistencial de grandes problemas de salud desde la perspectiva de la investigación que se ponen sobre la mesa. Creo que es importante, tanto en el foro, en las propias mesas, como en más de 50 comunicaciones orales y 240 pósteres. Es importante también resaltar que hay algunos elementos estratégicos que se van a debatir en estas mesas. Uno de ellos ha hecho hace un momento referencia el profesor Jerónimo Pachón, referido a todo lo que tiene que ver con el modelo de desarrollo de capital humano investigador, una apuesta importantísima por parte de la Consejería de Salud para ser capaces de, buscando la alianza y la coordinación con el resto de instituciones, poner sobre la mesa un proyecto sólido de apoyo a la investigación en salud dentro del sistema. Creo que tendrán oportunidad de conocerlo, debatirlo, y para nosotros es un hito importante, y creo que importante no solo en el contexto andaluz, sino en el contexto nacional. Otro de los elementos que me parece enormemente interesante que se van a debatir es lo relacionado con el biobanco andaluz y la posibilidad de creación y cómo ese proyecto se está desarrollando de un biobanco en red. Creo que poner al servicio de los investigadores el material biológico necesario para la investigación y ser capaces de unir esa información con la información clínica del paciente, el dato y la información clínica, la muestra y su información y su desarrollo en el tiempo, es para nosotros algo muy importante porque potencia y multiplica la capacidad investigadora en un contexto de una población con un sistema sanitario que atiende a 8 millones de personas y que podemos poner sobre la mesa un proyecto sólido, capaz de ser fiable y de contener todos los criterios y características de calidad necesarios para ello. En ello estamos y también creo que en este foro se van a presentar los avances que se están haciendo en ese campo. No quiero cansarles, pero solo destacar un elemento más que me parece importante. Paralelamente a esta reunión, y antes Juan Jesús Bandera ha hecho referencia a ello, va a haber cantidad de pequeñas reuniones, foros, encuentros. Antes me comentaba la organización, no paran de pedirnos salas para aprovechar esta jornada para encuentros entre investigadores, por encima de lo ya previsto, tanto de encuentros con empresas, con profesionales técnicos nuestros en relación a transferencia, como los cafés con expertos, a pesar de estos foros ya de encuentro, foros propios. Y uno de esos foros quisiera destacarlo especialmente, que regularmente cada 6 meses se hace, que es el foro que va a aglutinar nuevamente a la red de fundaciones gestoras de la investigación en Andalucía. Creo que eso es un esfuerzo importante que se han hecho en estos últimos años, de conseguir ligar y formar una red potente de fundaciones gestoras de la investigación, lideradas y coordinadas por la Fundación Progreso y Salud, que haga posible que trabajemos con criterios comunes, que mejoremos la eficiencia y, sobre todo y fundamentalmente, la respuesta ágil a los investigadores. Y en ese camino estamos y cada vez más queremos tener unas estructuras ágiles, capaces de dar respuestas y que lo único que sean es enormes facilitadores sensibles a las necesidades cambiantes que cada día se van produciendo en el contexto de la comunidad investigadora. Así agradecer este nuevo foro de reunión que sé que está progresando en ser vivo cambiante y eficaz cada día más. Y agradecerle su esfuerzo, que sé que no es poco, para ser capaces de trabajar en este contexto. Por último, solo señalar un elemento que me parece importante para la Consejería de Salud y yo creo que importante para la comunidad científica y personalmente también importante para mí. Y es que hay una mesa en memoria de Emilio Perea. Creo que la Consejería de Salud no lo olvida y con ese pequeño gesto, simplemente de tener una mesa determinante en salud en su memoria, queremos seguir pensando que Emilio nos comparte, que Emilio está con nosotros y que Emilio Perea, que dio un ejemplo de investigador comprometido e implicado con la salud de la ciudadanía y con la colaboración en la investigación, sea para todos y siga siendo un ejemplo. Es para nosotros una satisfacción poder simplemente poner su nombre para recordar que el agradecimiento de esta Consejería de Salud y de la comunidad investigadora sigue permanente ahí en su memoria. Finalmente, dejo ya de estas palabras porque creo que lo más importante que tenemos hoy que abordar es la conferencia inaugural, conferencia a cargo de un Premio Nobel 2004 en Química. Para nosotros un verdadero privilegio poder contar con él, agradecer sinceramente su capacidad para haber hecho un hueco en su agenda para estar hoy con nosotros. Es para nosotros un honor tenerlo hoy aquí y esperamos ser capaces de corresponder su amabilidad y ser capaces de aprender de su conocimiento. Muchísimas gracias. Sin más, paso la palabra a don Jerónimo Pachón, que va a hacer la presentación de nuestro invitado de honor. Muchísimas gracias.
Para mí, una vez inauguradas las jornadas y comenzando el programa científico con la conferencia inaugural, es, como ustedes comprenderán, un honor presentar brevemente, porque la reseña biográfica de todo lo que ha aportado y aporta en el momento actual a la ciencia y a la investigación en biomedicina, presentar al profesor Ciechanover es, bueno, para mí una enorme satisfacción, ¿no? Aparte de agradecerle, mi calidad de presidente del Comité Científico de las Jornadas, su amabilidad de estar con nosotros para enseñarnos, que es seguro lo que hará una persona de su gran categoría. Yo creo que el doctor Ciechanover, si destacaría algo, es que es un médico investigador, que a lo largo del tiempo, partiendo de su licenciatura en medicina, hace ya prácticamente, miraba casi coincidente con el año en el que yo me licencié, con lo cual veo que hace mucho tiempo, pero ha evolucionado después de su etapa postdoctoral en un extraordinario investigador bioquímico. El doctor Ciechanover trabaja en el Instituto Technion en Haifa, en Israel, y, como ustedes conocen, obtuvo el Premio Nobel de Química en el año 2004, junto con otros dos colegas que trabajaron conjuntamente por una cuestión de gran importancia en la aplicación a la medicina clínica y en el desarrollo eventualmente de tratamientos derivados de la traslación de los conocimientos básicos que realizaron. Obtuvieron el Premio Nobel por el descubrimiento de la degradación de proteínas por mediación de ubiquitinas. De manera que a partir de ahí el doctor Ciechanover ha continuado con una enorme producción científica y que ha llevado a los resultados que anteriormente les he comentado. El doctor Ciechanover nos va a hablar con un título tan sugerente como si nosotros vamos en camino de curar todas las enfermedades, y sobre el desarrollo de medicamentos en el siglo XXI en el que estamos. Yo creo que, como he comentado, lo único que tengo que decir de nuevo palabras de agradecimiento y darle la palabra cuando lo desee para comenzar su conferencia. Muchas gracias, doctor Ciechanover.
Good morning, everybody. I didn't get much of the Spanish, unfortunately, but I understand that you were told that I am a physician by education. Actually, I was trained partially as a surgeon, but then I decided to move to science. And the research that we carried out on very basic science led within 20 years to the discovery of a major biomedical platform that now there is not even a single pharmaceutical company in the world that doesn't work on it. There is already one very successful drug in the market based on our studies to combat multiple myeloma, which is one type of leukemia, which is selling for more than $2 billion a year. And this is just the beginning. The industry is jumping on the system that we discovered, and there will be many more drugs that will come into the market soon. I came yesterday from Boston, talking to a big conference of biotech industry and visited several companies, and the hype is huge. I'm telling you that not because I'm proud of what we did, obviously I am proud, but I'm telling you that because it's a paradigm and an example in how a basic research that didn't have any purpose at the beginning was translated within no time into an unbelievable knowledge in basic understanding of mechanisms of diseases, and then into a drug. Now, drugs have two advantages. The first advantage is obviously that they cure patients. You see thousands of patients. There are more than 100,000 patients already treated with the drug within the last 2 years since it came to the market. But drugs also have an advantage to the economy of the country. The economy is being pushed by the biomedical industry. And Israel, as you all know, maybe it's a country that not too many people like these days, not that I care much. But we have an $80 billion, we are 6 million people, and we are having an $80 billion high-tech and biotech industry. Teva alone, which is one of the biggest drug companies in the world, is worth more than $100 billion. They have one Israeli drug developed in the Weizmann Institute for multiple sclerosis called Copaxone, which sells for more than $2 billion a year, one single drug. And then they have another drug coming from our medical school, also from basic research, for Parkinson that sells for already $500 million. So we are really translating very quickly basic knowledge coming from the universities into dollars, euros, whatever you want, money that people can live on, besides, again, being able to treat patients. So as you see, investment in basic research has unbelievable fruits, and for every dollar invested, we are able to pull back many more dollars, probably much more than the banks can do with the dollars put into whatever you are doing with it. So therefore, I decided not to tell you about my own research, but to tell you about where the drug industry is going these days. And what we are facing as scientists and in the industry, forget about money, but where we were in drug industry and where we are heading with it. And obviously, as you can see, the dream of people is to remain forever young. That's what we want to be. We want to live forever and to be beautiful and young forever. And young has no definition. People think that young is 20, 30. When we are 50, people say, yeah, 50 is still a young age. And then when we push to 60 and 70, and somebody of 65 is dying of heart attack, they say, well, he died young. And as time span is extending, we are pushing the limit and the definition all the time. Basically, we want to be healthy and to live forever. So we want to remove diseases. That's the purpose. And we want to find the cure for all diseases. And you see, this is not my joke or my view of life. People are writing about it and talking about it. And the dream is to live in a disease-free world and be healthy and maybe live forever. But this idea has some problems in it. Maybe God didn't create us to live forever because he was smarter than we are. Because already now the world population is exploding in many ways and the earth is unable to sustain us. Not only to sustain us by providing us with food, look at China. So China is limiting now, for many years now, the birth rates in the family. You're allowed to have only one child in the family. And that's in order to sustain China as a country, otherwise they will explode. There will be no food and no education and no... But we are also consuming the fuel, the gas. Gas that was made in billion years from fossils is being consumed in no time, in less than a century. From the day that the car was invented and the train was invented, only 100 years, we are already consuming what billions of years of nature took us to make, not us, took nature to make. So now we are thinking about green energy and clean energy and nuclear energy, but if we shall keep on exploding the population and the demands, there will be an end to it also. So the individual will of us as human beings and as researchers to solve problems and as physicians to cure, think about it, is not necessarily coinciding with our ability to sustain Earth. So maybe after all, it's good that life is limited. Think about it. It's not, think about the philosophy behind it. It's not a simple idea that on one hand, we try to push for longer life, and we do push for longer life. We are living now twice as much as we lived 100 years ago by making antibiotics, improving medical techniques, surgery, anesthesia, fighting infections, and so on and so forth. So this is the philosophy behind. I'm not sure that there will be a day that will cure all diseases because we don't know what's God or evolution or whatever prepared for us behind the corner. Think about cancer, for example, or Alzheimer's disease, neurodegenerative disease, brain diseases. We didn't know about them 100 years ago. There was no Alzheimer's 100 years ago because we didn't live long enough to have Alzheimer's. We died before we had Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a disease, I don't know, of young age, old age. As I said, it's all relative, but it's a disease of the 7th, 8th, and 9th decade of life. People predict that if life will be prolonged, and life is still prolonged in a linear way these days, by the age of 120, all of us are going to have Alzheimer's. So you see, every 40 years, the creator of Earth, of life, whatever, prepared for us a roadblock. So on the age of 40, people died of infections because 100 and 150 years ago, we lived only 40 to 50 years. Women died at birth. We had 10 children because only 2 of them made it. 8 died of infections, of wars, of everything. So women had to bear many children in order to maintain families. Nowadays, one-child family is well accepted. Many people don't want children at all even. But let's forget about this idea, because this will bring our existence to a stop. But one-child family is a well-accepted idea these days, and we are able to carry it on because children live now in the Western world for long life. We live for a long life. So we didn't know about cancer either. Cancer is also a disease of old age, of the 6th and 7th and 8th decade. Yes, there is cancer in children. And it's very tragic because once we hear about it, our hearts is with the families. But it's only 1 and 1.5% of all cancers. 98.5% of all cancers are adult cancers. So we didn't know about cancer 100 years ago. So we can say that cancer is a man-made disease. We prolonged our life and we brought more diseases. So how do we know if we are going to live 160 years or 200 years? What's next behind the corner? I'm not a prophet. Prophets died when the Bible was written. And this was the end. We cannot prophesize anymore. So I don't know whether we are going to live in a disease-free world. But let's forget about the dream and let's come back to reality and think about the world of drugs. What are drugs? Now, the world of drugs as we know it now is a modern world. There were drugs forever. The Egyptians, the Greek, the Romans, all over the world, the Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine. But the drugs were kind of traditional drugs. They were not science-based drugs. There was a physician here and there in the mountains that treated the patients. There was no system to distribute knowledge. Now we have medical schools, we have research, we have internet. Nobody has a drug in Cádiz. Because if there will be a drug in Cádiz that is good, everybody will know about it. Because the researchers will want to publish it because he wants to become a professor. And the drug company will advertise it because they want to make money. And everybody will use it if it is a useful drug. We have a system now, not only to advertise, but to test it. Nobody can come with a drug without the testing. We have to have a control group that will not get the drug or will get an old drug and an experimental group, and we're comparing results and we are making statistics, and then a drug becomes a drug. But even then, it's still not accepted. Think about, because we are still, human beings are our experimental animals. We are initially experimenting it on animals, but at the end we are moving to human beings. And then doubts are coming. The statistics doesn't work. And think about hormone replacement therapy for menopausal women. Initially, there was a big hype. Yes, let's combat nature because women have an active life of between the age of 15 and 45. So people thought, let's extend it. Let's be smart. Let's outsmart nature. So they gave women hormones. But then cancer started to come out, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, so people thought maybe it's not good. But then osteoporosis came, so people thought, well, it's yes good. And then we started to enter into a new medicine, and then we still don't know what to do. Because hormonal replacement therapy, HRT, has side effects, but it has also beneficial effect. So then we entered a modern era in medicine, because initially, the physician was patronizing the patient. The physician told the patient, listen, I know, trust me, do what I tell you. But now with the internet, knowledge is expanding vastly, and the patients want to know and to understand. Medicine became participatory medicine. The patients are participating in decision-making. Side by side, especially in America, but now also in Europe and in Israel, patients are suing physicians in court for negligence. So the physicians are becoming defensive, so they don't want to make a decision anymore. They give the decision-making process to the patient. So when a woman has approaches menopause and she thinks about hormonal replacement therapy, the doctor tells her, listen, woman, this is the pluses and these are the minuses, but the decision is yours. You have to decide, which is not too easy. Because some women can make a decision, some cannot. Some have different educational, religious, cultural, historical background. It's not an easy process. So see what we are undergoing with the expansion of knowledge. We are facing more and more problems. So as you see, drugs, even if we think that we are now at the 21st century, have all the tools, we still don't have all the tools because we need to give the drugs to hundreds and thousands of patients and then learn the statistics in order to understand what they are doing. Doing experiments of 10,000 mice will not tell us the story. At the end of the day, drugs are aimed at people. And only processing of the data coming from millions of people treated, will tell us what is right and what is wrong. And as I told you, at the end of the day, we may not even know what is right and what is wrong, and we'll have to assess risks. Like we are assessing risks daily. When I'm flying every week, and I do fly every week all over the world, I take the risk that the plane will crash, or there will be a delay, and I will not get where I want, or my luggage will be lost, or something will happen. It's risk-taking. Life is risk-taking in every step that we are doing. We were not used to it in medicine. We were relying on the doctor, the smart doctor, to tell us what to do. But the doctor is not any smarter than you are. And especially the doctor doesn't want to take responsibility anymore. So medicine has moved to regular life. We are taking risk. We are eating a liver pate or eggs and cholesterol. We are taking the risk of heart attacks. Everybody knows that cholesterol carries the risk of heart attack. You want to eat an egg, you like it, fine, but know the risk. You want to be obese, overweight, you need to know the risk. So every action in life, we are taking responsibility. So drugs are external to our environment, and we need to understand what's going on. And at the end of the day, trust me, we don't understand. So let's look at drug development, where it was until now and where we are heading in the next century. Again, another one. You see, it's all popular now. You know, will there be a day that there will be an end to cancer? Yes, there may be a day. But then there will be Alzheimer. And then there will be something else. So we cannot really predict. But what we can do about diseases, many of the diseases we can prevent. It's much cheaper, much more logical, makes more sense to prevent a disease than to take a patient to the hospital and treat him. I talked about it. Look at this woman. Well, she is suicidal. She commits suicide. Well, if she wants to commit suicide, it's fine. If she wants to eat every day 10,000 calories and to look as nice as she looks, fine. But obesity is a disease of the Western world mostly. Now we are exporting it to China. You go to China, you also start to see to Japan. All these healthy societies now become infected with McDonald's and with all the other diseases of the world. This man is also suicidal, smoking. Nobody tells us to smoke. It's an addiction. But if we smoke, we take a risk not only of lung cancer, but of heart diseases, of kidney diseases, of brain diseases. So this can be prevented simply by not eating. This can be prevented simply by not smoking. Environmental disease, that's up to the governments. We are polluting the environment. And now we regret it. Cars are polluting. Industry is polluting. It's up to us to control it. If we should live in a cleaner environment, we should be less sick. Genetic diseases are a little bit more difficult to prevent, but we are now walking into it by understanding the DNA, so I'll talk about it. Infectious diseases can be eradicated. Swamps can be dried. We can fight infectious diseases by removing infectious agents from our environment. So many, many, many of these diseases, if you go into a hospital, into a general hospital, and you look at the diseases, at all the patients, you will see that 70% of them, if they would have behaved well or the environment would have behaved well, they wouldn't have been in the hospital. The lung cancer people that smoked and now they regret it, but it's too late, shouldn't have been there. The myocardial infarction people in the intensive care unit, if they wouldn't have eaten so much and took better care of their hypertension and cholesterol, shouldn't have been there. So many of those people that are in the hospitals today, just by proper behavior, no drugs, no nothing, should not have been there. So this is the right way to go, rather than thinking of sophisticated drugs. But we are human beings. Fortunately or unfortunately, we are human beings. We are weak characters, as we all know. We succumb to the temptation of the environment. and the temptation of good food and whatever, and therefore, think about it, we are generating our own diseases in many ways. So now let's narrow it and go to the drugs. Now, if you think about drugs in the current century, there are three periods of drug development, and they all accompany the development of science. Science and drug development go hand in hand, like in a cogwheel. The first wave of drugs was completely incidental. There was no science behind. There were only good people that had good eyes, and drugs, very sophisticated drugs, came to the world. Think about aspirin. Aspirin is probably the most used drug ever made in the pharmaceutical industry. Most of the faces here are young, but I'm sure that few of you take aspirin daily. I will not ask who does, because I don't want to make you shy out, but I'm sure that some of you take aspirin daily to prevent further heart attacks. So this is to prevent heart attack. But aspirin came to the world completely by chance, completely by chance. It was known for 1,000 years. The old Egyptians used willow barks with a very bitter taste in it to fight pain. So they knew that the plant has something that can fight pain. Only in the 19th century, the material from the willow bark was isolated when chemistry started to emerge as a profession. And it turned out to be salicylic acid, but it's very bitter. And then some chemists changed the chemistry to make it a little bit less bitter so it can be chewable, digestible. And then a Jewish pharmacist by the name of Felix Hoffmann worked for a very famous pharmaceutical company, Bayer, in Germany, so that his father has a disease which is called rheumatoid arthritis. It's a very debilitating disease. We have inflammation of the joints in the hands and in the feet. It's completely debilitating. People cannot do anything. They are paralyzed. They cannot walk, they cannot move, they cannot eat, they cannot write, they cannot do anything, just because of the pain in the joints. And his father suffered from pain, and he remembered this drug that was not marketable yet, and he decided on his own to synthesize it, to purify it, and to give it to his father. And lo and behold, the father not only was relieved from the pain, but was also relieved from the disease, from the inflammation. He came back to life. Felix Hoffmann went to the company and convinced them to generate aspirin as an anti-inflammatory drug, an anti-fever drug, an anti-pain drug. And Bayer went and made it a blockbuster. Meanwhile, the patent is off. The compound is very simple. Every student can make it in the basement. And aspirin is now sold in kilograms for nothing in every pharmacy. And slowly and slowly, more and more characteristics of aspirin are coming up. And now we know that it prevents coagulation of blood by preventing aggregation of platelets, and it can prevent heart attacks. You see, here is the heart, here is the stethoscope of the patient. Because it prevents inflammation, it can prevent cancer, because cancer is known to come in many cancers after chronic inflammation. So here is a woman with a breast. So it became a blockbuster. Why? Because Felix Hoffmann remembered something and gave it to his father. It was a homemade, kitchen-made treatment. Think about another drug, a miraculous drug, penicillin, that ushered in the era of microbiology and of antibiotics. Think about the world. How can we live without antibiotic? Every throat infection. There is not a single person in this audience that didn't take once in a lifetime antibiotics. Penicillin, ampicillin, streptomycin, whatever. One person in this whole audience, I bet you. How did it come to the world? By chance. Sir Alexander Fleming with Ernst Chains and others, they got the Nobel Prize for that. He was a microbiologist, so here is bacteria for those of you who are growing bacteria. And he left the Petri dish on which the bacteria grow on the table, open. Instead of putting it in the refrigerator and close it, he left it open for the weekend and went home. When he came back on Monday, he found that this thing, this white thing, is growing on it. It was a spore of a fungus that fell on the dish and grew, because the dish contains, you don't see it here, a very rich nutrient mixture. And he noticed with his eye, you need a good eye, scientists need good eyes, that there is a halo around it, that bacteria grow all over the place but not around the fungus. So he gathered that the fungus secretes an anti-life material, an antibiotic. And Ernst Chain and others purified it, and penicillin came to the world. And then Waxman came and found streptomycin and so on and so forth. And in the mid-30s, a new era started, and I'm talking just 78 years ago. I'm not talking old Greek history, old Roman history. I'm not talking the Spanish trips of Columbus to Central America and South America. We are talking 70 years. People are living. There are people that are still alive, that were born at that time. It's current history. A new era came to the world and changed completely medicine. It allowed us to make operations, to open the abdomen, the heart, because we know if there will be an infection, we can fight it with antibiotics. Surgery, every second patient died of surgery until the 30s because of infection. We couldn't do anything about it. We knew about Louis Pasteur, and we knew about sterility, but we couldn't prevent it. In the air, there are bacteria. So all by chance, complete chance. We are leaving now the chance area, and we are moving into the second revolution, which we are still on. We are now talking about our days. We are living, all of you are now living in this era. And this reflects again the development of chemistry in universities and in the industry, huge chemical industry. Think about ICI, about all the big chemistry. People can synthesize, good chemists can synthesize basically everything. So they synthesize millions of compounds, whether they are needed or not. The synthetic ability of chemistry is almost unlimited. So then people came to the idea, if we have so many millions of compounds, let's try them. Maybe one of them will be active against a disease, any disease. So think about cancer, okay? You can take cancer cells and grow them in dishes. So you can grow millions of dishes of cancer cells. Any cancer. You can eternalize, make a line of cells out of it. I will not bother you with medicine because it's a mixed audience with research. And then you can take millions of compounds and try, put a drop of one compound in each dish and see whether this compound kills the cancer cell. You don't have to understand the mechanism. You don't have to be intelligent. We are calling it high-throughput brute force screening. We screen until we find 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 compounds that kill the cancer cells. This is not a drug, it's still. We have to go to animals, we have to go to safety experiments to see that they don't kill the patients. We have to compare them to other drugs. But at the end of the day, from the screening, out of hundreds of compounds, one will make it to make a drug. And all the chemotherapy that we have these days in departments of oncology, many of them came from screening. And the screening is, again, is a non-intelligent, and I called it brute force screening, but it's a very useful technique. Another very successful drug that came of, one successful drug that came out of screening is not against cancer, but it's against high cholesterol. It's called statin. Many people are using statins to reduce cholesterol, and I'm sure that in the audience, I will not ask people to raise hands, there will be people that use statins. 100%. There are many hundreds of millions of people in the world that are using statins these days. It's a blockbuster. It's sold for more than $20 billion a year. To reduce cholesterol, it came out of screening. There was nothing intelligent about it. Akira Endo, a Japanese pharmacist in a Japanese pharmaceutical company, looked for some anti-cholesterol drug and he screened libraries. We call it library of compounds. You can buy the libraries. You pay $200,000 and you can buy a library of million compounds and you can dissolve them and screen one and one and one and one, all of them. If you have an assay in the lab, now everything is automated and robotic. You go to the pharmaceutical companies and you can screen for the drugs. So this was very useful. Actually, this was a major revolution. The screening and the ability of synthetic chemistry drove us to really fantastic achievements. But we are still not satisfied. Why we are not satisfied? Because the diseases turned out to be more complex than we thought. We were, until maybe 15 years ago only, 15 years ago, 1995. Every one of you here in the audience was already alive by 1995. I was already a trained physician and scientist, well established already in 1995. We are very naive about diseases. We thought that diseases reflect one type of pathology, cancer. We call the disease a cancer. We knew that there is a breast cancer and a prostate cancer and an intestinal cancer and brain cancer, but everything is a cancer. And for breast cancer or prostate cancer in men, we thought that's the same disease. And it all depends on when we are diagnosed. So a woman is lucky if she comes early, and the disease is discovered early, and then the tumor is small, and we take it out, and then she will cure it. But if she doesn't come early enough, the disease is already spread and metastasizes, and she will die. But otherwise, breast cancer is one disease. The same for men, for prostate cancer. We are very naive to think that these are one disease. And gradually, in the late 90s, mid-90s to late 90s, we learned that we were very naive. That breast cancer is not one disease, but basically maybe 100 diseases or 50 diseases that are very different from one another. How did we learn about it? We learned about it from the following. Let's say that a group of men with prostate cancer show up in the clinic, and the doctor diagnoses all of them as prostate cancer, or women with breast cancer, or whatever, it doesn't matter. And they look the same. So 2 women or 2 men come to the clinic, and they look the same. They have small tumor, the doctor looks, X-ray, no metastasis, everything looks the same. So the man and the woman are given the same treatment. Surgery, irradiation, chemotherapy. After 5 years, which is the time that is measured by oncologists as either cure or death, the group is divided into 2. Some of them, the green one, are okay. We treated them well. But the blue and the yellow died. But the blue and the yellow and the green were together at the beginning, but we couldn't see them. We were color-blinded to make the distinction because they looked all the same. So we treated them the same. And it took 5 years to realize that they were not the same. Some of them are alive and some of them are dead. This is very bad. It's good for the green one, but it's very bad for the yellow and the blue. Not only that it's bad, not only because they died, but because we wasted a lot of funds and energy by treating them wrongly. They got the same treatment, but it didn't help them. They were in the hospital, we irradiated them, we treated them with chemotherapy, we did everything, and they died. So, apparently, the 3 groups, the green, the blue, and the yellow, didn't have the same disease. Because if they had the same disease, the end result would have been the same. And we know now that women, some of them are completely cured of breast cancer, and some of them, unfortunately, are dying. And the same for men with prostate and with intestinal cancer and with many of the cancers. Some cancers are very deadly. We cannot do much about them still. Lung cancer and others, liver cancer. But some, we can do a lot. And these some are really a major part of the market. There are millions of women with breast cancer and millions of men with prostate cancer. So we can do something about it. But we need better spectacles. We need to make the identification of the groups already here. When we wait 5 years, it's too late. So how do we make the identification? We make it by looking at the DNA. And you see, I'm going to the Time magazine. I'm not going to any sophisticated medical journal. The secret is in our DNA, in our genetic material. You see here, famous Adam and Eve, for those of us that believe in Bible. And they are surrounded by their DNA, because each of them has their own DNA. Adam and Eve have their own DNA. And you see, drugs of the future, they are all in this famous double helix that was discovered by Watson and Crick. When? In the middle 50s, only 60 years from now. It's all our lifetime. It's the genetic information that makes us susceptible to certain diseases and will determine the fate of the treatment. And the woman that died didn't have the same disease as the woman that survived because their DNA was different. We already have a hint now. You know already that women that carry the BRCA1 gene and the BRCA2 gene are much more susceptible to breast cancer and to ovarian cancer than women that don't carry the gene. But also women that don't carry the gene can get breast cancer, obviously. So there must be other genes that make them susceptible, and we need to understand the map. So we know one gene, but one gene is nothing, because there are hundreds of them. And we need to get access into all those genes. And we need to understand what's going on with the genetic material. So in order to understand what's going on with the genetic material, and you see, I'm not going to any sophisticated medicine. We are already inside, but we are not there yet. We are heading there. The scientists, still not the physicians, unfortunately, are heading there. Look at this woman. This is a biopsy taken from the breast. This is woman A and this is woman B. And you see that woman B has something that woman A doesn't have. Something brown that is stained by histochemistry brown. She has an estrogen receptor. And the estrogen receptor drives the cancer. This is the cause of the cancer. So what we need to do with this woman is treat her with anti-estrogen receptor, which is a drug called tamoxifen here. But this woman, if we shall treat her with tamoxifen, nothing will happen. She doesn't have the estrogen receptor. So why to treat her with anti-estrogen receptor for something that she doesn't have? So we need to subclassify the different cancers of men and women according to the molecular targets and to tailor the treatment accordingly, what we call personalized medicine. This is the word, the buzzword that everybody is talking, but we still don't understand, and the roadmap is very difficult to get there. So this woman should be treated with tamoxifen, while this woman should be treated with something else that I cannot tell you with what, because we still don't know. We have to sequence the DNA in order to understand what mutations she has, in order to develop drugs for the mutations, in order to treat her. So the road is long for this woman. This woman is lucky. This woman belongs to the unlucky one yet. But we have to discover the secrets of her disease by doing a very detailed genetic analysis. So we need to sequence the DNA. And you see another woman that has a mutated EGF receptor, and she can be treated with Herceptin, that is a well-accepted drug now in the world. But again, only certain women can take it and others not. Others can take it, but it won't help them. So we need to classify. We need to develop better spectacles, better molecular diagnostic spectacles to look at the different cancers. So breast cancer is not one disease. There is Herceptin breast cancer, and estrogen receptor breast cancer, and BRCA1 breast cancer, and there are 100 breast cancer. And we need to know each and every one of them by genetic screening. So we need to go to the DNA, and this is the DNA, and to understand the sequence of each and every one of us. And then we are going to build a bank, and we are already doing it, not we, the scientific community, all over the world. We are building a cancer genome atlas. We are screening hundreds of cancers: breast, prostate, brain, pancreas, liver, intestine, to understand the diversity of each cancer in order to identify targets for the drug companies then to develop drugs. And then once patients come to the hospital, we shall be able to tailor the drug and to say, you belong to breast cancer group A, subgroup B, subgroup 3', whatever. They don't have even names yet. And you should take treatment A'-, Delta, whatever. So we are moving into a new era. All this looks good on paper. Papers are always easy. You can write and erase and it. In the laboratory, it looks much more difficult because it's very difficult to make the maps, to sequence all those genomes. We have the technologies, the bioinformatics. New disciplines are evolving around it. There is a new discipline called bioinformatics, processing of all this data. 10 years ago, we didn't know what bioinformatics is. Now there is not a single decent faculty of life sciences or medicine that doesn't have bioinformaticians there. Computers. Without computers, we couldn't have done it. 20 years ago, we didn't have computers. Now we have computers. So we are moving very quickly. But I want to, before closing, I want to raise just one point, ethical point, about the DNA, a human point. Now, the DNA is probably our best secret. Everything is inside our DNA. When we go to the doctor these days, when I see a patient, the patient tells us their very secrets. And they trust us. And we swear, as physicians, for those of you who are physicians, they swear that the information that the patient gives us will remain confidential. People are coming with their diseases. Women are sterile, people are psychotic, people have heart attacks, whatever. And it's the secret between us and the doctor. And the doctors swear, when they graduate medical schools, that the secret will remain just between him or her and the patient. But the information now is very limited because the patient can tell, okay, I have a heart attack, so what? But the DNA contains all the information that we know and don't know, for the future even. The DNA contains all the mutations that we have, that one day will go to develop cancer and one day will develop depression and mania and schizophrenia and violence and heart attack and everything. Most of it we still don't know. So the DNA is a book now that we still cannot read. But one day there will be more and more information. I just read this morning a new issue of the journal Neuron, which deals with neurodegenerative diseases. The whole issue is dedicated to neurogenetics, to Parkinson and to Alzheimer. There is already a lot of information in my genome that tells me whether I will have Alzheimer when I'll grow old or not. So the information is very explosive and it's very sensitive. It's sensitive because of two reasons. One, maybe the government would like to know the information. Maybe the government of Israel would like to have the best soldiers in the army that will fight the Arabs and the rest shouldn't be there. Maybe the insurance company want to know when they make you a policy whether you are going to die soon, so they will not insure you, or will charge you a high policy, or whether you are healthy. And then they will be happy to insure you because you are going just to pay your policy and never take back any penny. So maybe some foreign agencies would like to know about it. Okay, so let's say that the doctor is still very trustworthy and he will keep the information secret. He will not let anybody know. But maybe you want to know the information. On the surface, you will say, no, I don't want to know what will happen to me. Don't tell me. But some of you may want to know. Think about yourself. Many of us, I don't, but many of us are going to future tellers to tell you the future. She looks in your palm and she tells you the future. Why I don't go to a future teller? Simply because I don't believe it. This is nonsense. But the fact that people are going to palm readers tell you that you want to know about your future. And typically the future teller will tell you good things anyway. You know, there is an old Chinese habit. At the end of the meal, you get a cookie. And you break the cookie and inside it's your future. But this is always good. You will be rich, you will be happy, you will marry the most beautiful woman, everything is good. But this is not life. But the DNA has the real future. But still, people may want to know it. Not because of our character, but because we already are involved in knowledge collection. Think about ourselves. Think about a very naive event in our life. Falling in love. We're going to get married. We are already limited. When I went to get married, I already picked up a woman, or she picked up me, out of selection. We are selecting. And we are biased. We are selecting for intelligence. I don't believe that a scientist who is whatever, a professor in the university, will marry a woman that cannot read or write. So we are selective for some intelligence. Maybe we don't say it, maybe we don't admit it, but we are selective. We are selective for beauty. It's very difficult in our society for handicapped people to get married. Typically, handicapped marries handicapped. A man that can see or a woman that can see will not marry a blind. Why? Because we are biased. You should admit it. This is true. This is our society. We appreciate power. We appreciate money. We appreciate intelligence. People like powerful people, whatever power means. So we are selecting in very narrow circles. So now think about it. We may want to select based on DNA. If we are already selecting based on looking at people and inquiring how they are doing in society, why not selecting about the basis of their genetics? How tall the kids are going to be, how blonde they are going to be, how intelligent they are going to be. Think about it. You think that I'm talking nonsense? No. We are already selective. So you will say, well, let's stay romantic. Let's just... And we are not romantic anyway, as I told you. We are romantic in a limited way. But let's force it even further. Think about a woman, a married woman, that discovers now, by chance, by not chance, that she is a carrier of a BRCA1 gene. And she is going, either she has a breast cancer or she is going to have a breast cancer. If she is having a breast cancer, she must get a treatment. If she doesn't have it, now she has to think what she's going to do. Maybe she wants her 2 breasts to be taken out, because otherwise she gets it. Will she do it? Will her husband agree to it? So she's not alone already in the decision. She has already a partner to decide with. But let's forget about the husband. What she's going to tell her daughter. Her daughter is 20 years old. And she's now going to college. And she's dating a young man. Maybe she is a carrier of the gene. If she's going to tell the daughter, is the daughter going to tell the boyfriend? Or she's going to cheat him and hide it from him? We cannot hide our beauty. We cannot hide the fact that we have 2 eyes. We cannot hide the fact that we can walk and not limp. But we can hide the fact that we have a gene that makes us susceptible to cancer. But that's cheating. If you know it, you know it. And what the boyfriend is going to do, knowing that her future wife and the future mother of his children is going to go into a risk which is 80% higher of having breast cancer. Is he going to marry her? So here we are facing a dilemma with the DNA. The problem didn't start with the woman. The problem started with the daughter. The problem started with the mother. She has a breast cancer. She was diagnosed in the hospital as a BRCA1 carrier. She has 2 daughters. She has a husband. What she's going to do? If she doesn't tell the daughter, she may put the daughter into a risk. Because by knowing that she has the gene, she can go to periodical examinations, to mammography, to MRI. But if she doesn't tell her, she puts her into a risk. If she does tell her, she also puts her into a risk. So what to do? I don't have a solution. I didn't come here. I'm not a magician. I'm just a human being, like you are. But I'm just telling you that as sophisticated as we are going to be, the deeper is the swamp that we are going to drown in. And the bigger are the challenges that we are going to face. But this is the road. We are not going to stop science because we need to solve problems. The only last word is that it requires not only scientists and physicians to be involved, but also sociologists, legislators, politicians. The problem is much broader than science, and we need all to cooperate. And the last word is about the tools of science, because people are very afraid of science in many ways. From time to time, I encounter people that say, I don't believe in science. I don't know what's to believe in science. Science is not a god. What is to believe in science? I tell them, are you believing in your cell phone? They say, yes, I talk to my family with the cell phone. I said, you know, cell phone is a science because it broadcasts waves to antennas into the space, and then it rings on the other side of the ocean. So this is science. Do you believe in your car? Yes, I drive my car. Car is a science, no? The problem of scientific tools, that each of them can be used wrongly or goodly. And it's up to us to decide. So think about, let me end with Alfred Nobel, that I proudly carry the prize on his name. Alfred Nobel invented the dynamite. That's how he made his money, the TNT, the nitroglycerin. With nitroglycerin, we can fill a bullet and shoot somebody to death, and many are doing it, still, unfortunately, in our world. But can you imagine our world without dynamite? All the beautiful bridges, the oil wells, the roads. Think about radioactivity. With radioactivity, we can build an A-bomb that will kill hundreds and thousands of people. But we also irradiate patients and cure them from cancer. So it's up to us to decide what we are doing with the tools, up to the society. So each tool, car can overrun on people and kill them, but without cars there will be no world. So each tool can be developed one way or another way, and the same is for the DNA that we are heading to, fortunately, these days. But the utilization of the tool has implications much broader than just science and medicine. And all of us must be involved in solving the problems that are coming with it. So thank you very much for your attention.